Nikki, can I have a clap?
God, it's going to be a long day.
I know, right?
Now, we know that you know that we love electric cars. I mean, the clue is in the name, electrifying.com. But the start of the new year, new beginnings, we thought we should, well, come up with the honest truth. And that is to admit to you that electric cars aren't perfect. There we go. I've said it. I've said it.
It cannot be true. It can't be true.
It's true.
I mean, why, you might ask, are we telling you this? Have we been hacked? How are we being paid off by climate change deniers? Well, no, we're not, actually. Not even the biscuit people.
No, we're definitely not. Listen, we're about to have a good old moan. Because unless you address the downsides of anything and the downsides of electric cars, how does progress happen? How do things improve? And if things hadn't got to where they are today, we'd all be driving around in a G-Whiz and plugging it into the 3-point socket, and that would be dreadful.
Yeah, because they were terrible. Like, literally terrible. I drove
Did you
them.
even fit in one?
Yeah, I had my knees up round my ears, but they were some of the worst electric cars in the world ever. They made our top 10, didn't they?
It did
was
make
number
our top
one.
10. We have a video about
Awful
that.
cars,
Yeah, we do.
awful.
And instead of that, we're faced with the prospect of kicking 2021 off with loads of amazing electric cars.
True.
Very exciting.
Coming
yeah.
down.
It
Cars
is.
that will, stick 300 miles of charge on before you know it, can go quicker than a Lamborghini. And just more choice as well. So we're in a good place, but we're in a good place because people moaned.
Yeah, the rate of improvement's been amazing. And for once, actually, I hope this is one of our videos that goes instantly out of date.
Absolutely. So here you go. The 5 things we hate about electric cars from the people that really love them.
Number 1, range.
Now, we can sugarcoat it as much as you like, but let's be honest, electric car range just doesn't always work for some people's driving styles. No. We always talk about this sort of average commute or an average amount of miles that everyone does on a weekly basis.
What's that? Is it like 20 odd?
Exactly. It's about 20 every day. In which case, most electric cars more than adequate. But some people do hundreds every day. I mean, you must do hundreds every day because you live like way up there in the north
place
somewhere.
That's not really been discovered yet, don't you?
It's the rural area, yes. Yeah. But yeah, no, you're dead right. Sometimes I do absolutely no miles, and other days I could quite happily do 400 or 500.
Yeah.
And it's just, electric cars, it depends on your usage profile, doesn't it? About how you use a car to whether it works.
Yeah.
I think the other issue with range is that the official figures that are quoted by the car makers, the WLTP figure, the snappily titled. So you're going to see that all over the place when you look at the specifications of cars. It's the WLTP figure. And this was a standardised figure which was designed to test a car's efficiency and how far it can travel, whether it runs off petrol, diesel, electricity, chip fat, whatever it does.
And it's confusing.
Yeah. Now, those tests are done in extremely controlled conditions. Put your hands up if any of us drive in controlled conditions.
I do. I drive exclusively in a lab whilst wearing a white lab coat.
Yeah, and the goggles, don't forget.
I wear safety goggles at all times.
But that's how the tests are done.
Yeah,
the tests are done in a
completely
lab.
unrealistic, isn't it?
Yeah, so you look at a WLTP figure and say it's 160 miles, and then you do, a quick blast up the M6 to get somewhere on a cold winter's day with the heater on, and your projected 160 miles of range drops to 110 miles.
Yeah.
And that's where
Easily.
the problem lies. It is very easy for people to think, I'm going to get 160 miles.
Of course.
Why shouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, it's so misleading. I think, we've driven a lot of electric cars, so we know you can potentially take up to a third of that range
I've had
off
worse.
the. Really? Ooh,
Yeah.
really?
I mean,
how
yeah.
do you drive?
Honda E.
Really bad.
Honda E has dropped more than half. And that was, it's weird when you see that 100% full and there's in your head what you think it's going to do and it'll be doing, 2/3 or a half. That makes you nervous.
Yes, it does.
The cars often will do more once you get moving, but
It's when you first get into the car
That's the thing.
and you've fully charged it and it's already dropped to sub 100 and you're thinking,
it scares
"Ooh,
you.
I've
Because
got
your
to do 80
journey,
miles."
yeah, exactly. Your journey is possibly 101 miles.
Yeah.
And that is why efficiency is so important
It's
in an
key.
electric car. Curiously, actually, if this second point were to improve, number one may not be
Yes.
such a bugbear, because their second point is, Ms. Shields.
It is charging and the charging infrastructure.
Now, charging at home or at your destination is great. We're all massive fans of waking up to a full tank of electrons, but the elephant in the room here has got to be public charging, right? Because it's a bit hit and miss, and let's face it, it can be a bit of a pain in the backside even now. I know there's more chargers out there, but I've had some absolute nightmares. I know people you know have as well.
People I know have, that's probably another video, but it's particularly challenging if you are new to electric.
Oh yeah, by the way,
It's a
if you're a Tesla owner and you want to mention the supercharger network, just zip it for a bit, because we know it's brilliant and you'll just have to skip. Yeah, we are quite jealous, but just skip to our next point. This is for people who have to charge on the normal public charging network.
I know, I'd love to actually, it'd be an interesting question. Has anyone not had a bad experience? In the comments below, let us know. We would love to find an electric car user that hasn't had a bad experience with the public charging network, because, well, I've never met one. They are very rare.
Tesla owners, again.
I'm about to tell you some people that will have had an okay charging experience. There are some. But we should actually doff our cap, because there are some people out there who are doing charging pretty well. BP Pulse. Osprey, I don't know if you've come across those guys yet.
Very good experience with Instavolt.
Instavolt as well are brilliant. And it's worth pointing out that we had around 800 decent rapid chargers in the UK in 2015. We've got 8,000 of them now, which is great. And the overall charging infrastructure has massively improved. There's around 34,000 chargers at 12,000 locations around the UK. However, despite all this, charging can be a very, very fraught experience.
Yes, it can.
Particularly if you are misfortunate enough to need to charge on the UK motorway network. All motorway charging points are operated by Electricity. I know.
They were the trailblazers. We've got to thank them for that.
They should be applauded. They should be applauded.
Yeah,
Really
a very slow one-hand clap.
Listen, they were the pioneer of charging points back in 2011, when the future of the electric car was a 24 kilowatt Nissan Leaf.
Yeah.
That was something to get excited about. And they were fit for purpose then and did a good job.
Every bad experience I've ever had, almost without fail, has been with Electricity on a motorway.
Every bad experience I've ever had charging, pretty much without fail, has been with Electricity. And therein lies the problem. They have not kept up. Their equipment is old, and yet they still have the contract.
So what are they going to do?
Which was renewed in 2019 to operate the charging infrastructure on the backbone of the UK network, which is absolutely appalling.
For the next 10 years.
Do you know the worst bit? Do you know the worst bit? You have to drive past the supercharger network chargers to get to the Electricity ones. And they will be open, and they will be lots of them free, and you know that they'll all do 150 kilowatts, or at least 50, and they'll all do them reliably, and you drive past it to go to the Electricity one that doesn't work.
Or have a CCS connector, which is the other thing that is quite annoying.
How?
Because
Nowadays?
so many don't have the CCS connector, which is what most of the cars actually use.
This makes me sad. It makes me actually sad.
So basically, get an electric car, but try not to use service station charging points, because prepare to fail.
The other thing is that it's the perception of charging. So we did some research with Electrifying last year, and we found out that 7 in 10 of those people who we surveyed came back to us and said the main reason for them not wanting to go into an electric car was concerns about charging. And it's also the level of charging across the country. So did you know there are more charging points in Westminster, in London, in that tiny little geographical area, than there are in the whole of the West Midlands?
Wow, that's crazy.
So
Is that because the West Midlands is still coal-fired?
listen, anyone from the West Midlands, you can answer that in the comments below. We could go on and on about charging,
Yes.
and it is an issue, and we completely understand why people do have range anxiety. But
I think it's also a bit confusing as well with charging points, the rate at which you can charge. Because again, some people I know that have had electric cars didn't realise that the reason that their car was charging so slowly was because they were either using the wrong charge point, and they didn't realise the capability was there to go faster.
there is no point having 7 kilowatt public charging points around the
Because
place.
you've got to leave them on there for 5 hours to do any.
Or overnight, or you just can't do
But
that.
that's what I think lampposts are 7 kilowatt generally, aren't
I mean, I think that's different. If you're
they're overnighty ones, but yeah, public charge points that are anything less than sort of 50 kilowatt really aren't worth it. But it's also things like different cars have different onboard chargers. Yeah. So you can plug your car into 150 kilowatt, but, if you haven't got the capability of taking that charge into your car, it's pointless.
So and then you're paying for it as well.
Yeah, and it's education, isn't it, I suppose? We've all got to understand the equipment to make sure we get the best out of it.
I think it just needs standardisation, doesn't it? You've had lots of different charging providers coming along, and I think that's starting to happen. But basically, I think...
How many apps have
And
you
let's
got on
not
your
talk
phone?
about payment. Whoa, how do you want to pay for your charging once you've actually got it working?
Yeah.
I want to work it off in the kitchens.
Apps, cards, credit cards.
It is complicated. So anyway, that's one of the things we don't
Can you
like
tell
about
we don't
electric
like it?
cars. It can be confusing and it can be weird, but we've got to move on because this could take all day. So the next thing that we're annoyed about electric cars is the cost. Do you want to know what the biggest single issue we get addressed in our comment section is? The high cost of electric cars.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And we did the survey that I mentioned that we did last year. So we surveyed 18,000 drivers, which is a huge spread for a survey.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. And 67% said their main concern about electric cars was the price, was that they thought they were expensive.
That's massive.
But let's face it, they are not an inexpensive purchase, are they?
Unfortunately, they are expensive, and they are expensive to make, particularly at the moment while the technology is still being developed. I mean, the price has come down a bit from when they first came on the market, and they will set to come down even more over time. But I think there was a bit of research done by Munich University, and they calculated that the drivetrain of a normal internal combustion car, which is the engine, gearbox and exhaust, is 23% of the overall cost of a small car.
Right.
However, in an electric car, the powertrain, so the battery, the electronics, and the gearbox, that amounts to 65%.
Do you know what? That's a really good point. It's a direct translation, isn't it? So what does a Zoe cost at the minute? 29 grand?
Yeah.
So a small pure electric hatchback is £29,000. What can you get a Clio for? It's the same manufacturer. It's about 15 grand, if I recall properly.
Huge difference.
That's half.
Yeah.
So it's paying twice the amount of actual cash for a car that's got the same amount of kit. It's roughly the same size. How are you going to tell people that electric cars aren't just overpriced trinkets for people who can afford them?
You've got to look at that lifetime, haven't you? The cost of the car over its lifetime. Because it will be cheaper in the long run, because of course you're saving on the fuel costs. However, it's still a massive barrier to entry when you see a big price tag.
It is, but I'm not going to let you both get away with that too much, because I think we've been a bit downbeat. I think, yes, we have been able to say electric cars are expensive. There are really good second-hand electric cars coming through to the market now, which is starting to come through, which is a great entry point, and also prices are starting to come down. So if you look, say, at the Mini Electric, that's after your down payment, £299 a month. And that is really on a par with some of the other mini models as well. And to get some of my figures up here, moving a bit up the car market, a mid-spec VW ID3, that's around £34,000. An equally spec'd Golf GTD hits the road at 33. Look, neither are bargains, but that parity is starting to come in.
It's kind of the PCP deals like you're talking about, but the cost per month is what you've got to look at.
But also look at the Tesla Model 3. Okay, in terms of pricing,
you're obsessed.
Maybe it's £40,000. It's a not an inexpensive car, but it is the same as, say, a BMW 330i.
Yeah, but hang on. I used to have a Dacia Duster, right, which is a small SUV. That costs just over 10 grand. How are you going to get me on that budget end into an electric car? Is it the second-hand market?
It's going to be second-hand now, and prices will come down. It's like anything.
Yeah, new tech.
Volume, mass production. So, moving on to our next point.
This is a little bit controversial because it's electric car owners. Not all of them.
You guys.
Some of them. Some of the people. Mainly people like Nikki.
Me.
With any new technology, there is always that one person in the room that will take things that little bit too far. You know the kind of person, they're at a dinner party and they will tell you that Tesla has single-handedly changed the world and reversed climate change and everything has changed, and anyone that has a petrol or a diesel car is basically a serial killer with car keys.
But then you have to ask them, did they buy the Tesla share at the right point in the market?
Exactly.
And if they did, then you don't speak to them again.
Look, as Nick said, here at Electrifying, we really love all things electric. We love electric cars, and we're really passionate about helping people make the switch, but only if it is right for them. And where we think it all gets a bit ugly is when we read and we hear comments from electric car owners who are just really unnecessarily hostile to drivers who choose, for whatever reason, to not drive an electric car.
It's
And you know what?
incredibly aggressive sometimes.
Some of it is really aggressive and not necessary. You know, electric cars work brilliantly for some people. They don't work brilliantly for everybody. We just have to accept that.
You know what I think it is? You know when you're a teenager and you were into that like super cool band, and then when everyone else started getting into it, you got all chippy.
really
And it's like, I'm really annoyed that everyone is starting to cotton on to this new band. I don't like it anymore. I want something else. It's because the people that are into them feel very strongly, very passionately about them. But
Which is great.
sometimes sometimes it just edges into being a bit obstructive.
Yeah.
And that's what we're kind of talking about, is when EV passion becomes slight obsession and then you're boiling people's rabbits, and it's not nice, guys. Just chill.
Be nice to everyone, and
chill
also
out.
encourage those internal combustion engine drivers to give it a go.
Carrot, not the stick.
Quite like a bit of stick sometimes.
Stop it. And share the biscuits, will you?
I'm not sharing the biscuits, they're my biscuits.
Another thing we hate about electric cars is EV bull. One thing we know about us all is that we do not like change. Fair to say, isn't it? In fact, Henry Ford once said that if he had asked the people what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse.
It's a great quote. It's a great quote.
True. And those early car pioneers, they were sort of mocked. And, you know, there were lots of criticisms. The cars didn't go far enough. There wasn't enough range. They were too expensive. They were difficult to refuel. Does all that sound familiar? I think it does, doesn't it? Look, we know that electric cars are not the answer for everybody at the moment. We'd like to think that here at Electrifying, we are really firm believers in that if a diesel is right for you, then a diesel is right for you.
Yeah.
And if you want to make the switch and that is right for your life, then we're here to help you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, drivers that don't want to make the switch, well, they're completely fine with us. But what I have to say does wind us up is people who, they just trot out the same old urban myths and stereotypes, and for want of a better word,
How many times have you heard, yeah, but when you charge your car, you're putting dirty fuel into your car, so that doesn't mean your car is green anymore.
Oh, because it's powered by a power station somewhere else.
Exactly. And you're like, yeah, but it's the greenest car that there is, and it will only get greener with time. And a lot of the electricity is powered by renewable sources.
The thing is, it's the false information that gets presented to the general populace as absolutely cast on, nailed on facts, and it's not true.
Yeah.
You know, if you read the comment section of Electrifying, you'll get loads and loads of people that are, you know, exactly like you say, the national grid is going to melt down if we all plug in our electric car at the same time.
It's really not.
It's really not. And we asked the national grid about that, and they agreed with us that it's fine. You know, what other ones have we got?
Well, we do have. We've got our own myth-busting whole crib sheet, which you can go to on electrifying.com for all the latest
from
myths.
actual proper
have you
scientists.
Wait. Did you drive your car in the rain? Because I'm too worried. I might get electrocuted.
That's good. My dad said that.
Don't even think about a car wash.
Don't put it in a car wash
Don't put it in a car
because
wash.
everything will fall over.
Look, there are, of course, some arguments about electric cars that can't just be laughed off or swept under the carpet or filed under N for nonsense. You know, there is no hiding the fact that an electric car battery does use a lot of materials that have to be extracted from the earth. Lithium, cobalt, the two most talked about. You know, usually because both are really tricky to extract and they can come from parts of the world with pretty horrific problems.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And, we talk about lithium, as you say, it's one of the sort of major minerals used in battery production. And I think most of it comes from Australia and Chile. And 56% of the world's lithium is now used for battery production. So that is a huge amount. And obviously, it is a finite resource. But they are doing a huge amount of work at the moment to find alternatives to lithium.
Cobalt-free.
And cobalt as well. Yeah. And actually, so I met quite a few scientists in Chile where they have a lot of the lithium mines.
Did you go to a mine?
And I went to a lithium mine. And there are universities there doing incredible studies to find alternatives because they know that this is not going to be, the right source to use for the foreseeable future. And they're very close to finding it.
The other thing that doesn't get reported a lot is that if you look at Volkswagen, for example, these big companies only use large industrial suppliers who are required to work with the UN guidelines for safety and for labour. That's the kind of stuff you don't read about on social media. We're not saying that this is, an industry that is whiter than white, because it isn't, and there are quite clearly some real issues there. But equally, as you said, Nikki, alternatives are being looked for. And those bigger producers are taking it very, very seriously.
And they're being responsible.
I mean, I remember when you went to that mine, it was quite interesting that they were just scraping the lithium off the top of a salt pan.
Yeah, I mean, the whole process of it is incredible.
I mean, there's loads of interesting things going on as well, though, because there's things that are happening that we didn't realise were going to happen until we started having this kind of EV revolution. And that's, the batteries are lasting a lot longer.
Yes.
So they're not having to be replaced as much as we thought they would. And the batteries are going on to second life use.
Yeah, they can be used for home storage or...
Also, have you heard about Walmart?
Oh, no.
So Walmart has been started to make basically power banks of old car batteries that they put in their big warehouses, and then they have PV solar on the roof. Those places are basically starting to be self-sufficient. So when the world collapses, I'm going straight to the Walmart, which is full of food and has its own power source. I'm planning
When
for
are you
this.
going? Tomorrow?
I'm going to go soon.
We're pretty close.
And take your biscuits with you, because we don't want them.
Food, power, I'm going to be sorted.
So there you have it, gang. 5 things that we, the people who love electric cars, do really hate about them. Also 5 things that are continually improving, and 5 things that we hope will be redundant before too long.
But on balance, despite all of these niggles, we still believe that switching to electric is the right thing to do.
So please do subscribe to our channel so that you know when our next video lands.
You hate doing those.
I hate doing these, but I'm contractually obliged to.